Arts and Adventure summits the airwaves. This is the Ogden Arts and Adventure Show. I'm your host, Brandon Long, along with the greatest host in all the land, co-host in all the land, Todd Oberndorfer. And this is the Ogden Arts and Adventure Show. With us today, we have, oh boy, where do I begin? Alex Docta, ultra runner, works for Goal Foundation here in town. What's the official title of Goal Foundation?
Operations Manager.
Operations Manager. And of course, Todd, because it's the Ogden Arts and Adventure Show, we did this totally on accident. Alex, as an outdoor adventure enthusiast, has an arts side to him. He can sing.
Of course.
Has vocals. We're not going to put you on the spot, but that would be vocals, fun. Yeah. What if you sang an a cappella song? Is it like a band? Is it like a guitar, like a solo artist, or is it like classical? Like what would you
just love
do?
songs?
Yeah. No, I'm a classic rock, hard rock guy. I grew up, my mom's 20 years difference of me only, so she's quite young. So grew up listening to her music, and then I grew up listening to, Soundgarden and, Nirvana, and then graduating into Audioslave and all those, kind of things.
I like that, graduating into Audioslave. Yeah. Like we don't start with Audioslave.
Well, you could, but they didn't exist,
Okay.
But kind of like on the rock side, but again, even going back to Journey and stuff, more of like the real singers that like pushed hard.
Can you push? Can you do a Journey cover?
Yeah, I could do decent.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah. I'm getting older though. That's the thing.
Is the voice gone?
It's there, but you do see some of the notes begin to slip,
Okay.
And that's when that midlife crisis starts to slip in because you go.
Tyler, who was lead singer of one of the greatest rock and roll bands of all time, just had to suspend their tour because he's too old. The vocals are going. They were bleeding, actually.
Oh, who is it? Steven Tyler?
Steven Tyler. Yes.
Aerosmith?
Yeah, Aerosmith.
Yeah. A guy I haven't seen yet in concert, but oddly enough, can still push pretty well, but he's living on the edge, as I think he's probably saying.
Hey, I saw them probably 15 years ago when they were in their 90s. And so they're doing very well for themselves.
He looks like
and it was a killer show, too. Yeah. It was very good, too. It was a stadium show. I think that's all they do is stadium shows, but it was thousands and thousands of people there, and they killed it. In fact, they even had a secondary stage in the sort of in the grass in the the cheap seats where I was in the back. They set up a second stage and they did like the last third of the show, I think, up there.
Wow!
So they kind of reversed the side. Anyway,
came out and gave a little bit.
Yeah, it was nice
to the pop.
They know how to take care of the people.
Yeah. Well, you're in the business that long, you better know how to what you're doing.
Yeah, no doubt.
And then also, your tie to the arts is you're married to someone who is in the arts.
Yeah, my wife Nicole is a documentary filmmaker. So I don't know how much more I can go on about that and speak about what she does without her here.
Fair enough. We'll chat with her some other time, but it's in the family, that's for sure.
But she's cool. Yeah, she's cool.
So you have been in Ogden, I think it was 8 years or something?
Well, no, we've been in Ogden since 18. So we came to Utah in 15 from Wisconsin, and lived in Mill Creek for a while, and then came up to Ogden for a couple reasons, mainly outdoors related. The inversion, the air quality is about 50% better here. So that's cool. That was kind of driving me nuts. Yeah. And then I'm an outdoors person, but I'm inherently lazy. And so Ogden represented the opportunity to get us a little bit closer to the trails. We only actually lived a couple miles away from trails when we bought our place in Mill Creek, but now we live on the East Bench, and man, we're one house off the National Forest there, and
not bad.
It's like this secret that's not quite a secret anymore, but Ogden really has access to trails that is unparalleled to almost any other city in the country. So that's what brought us up here.
Great. They all know now.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Just not because of this.
Yeah. It's going to go viral.
Very good. So you spend your time on the trails running, right? Typically, mostly. Yeah. You do mountain bike. You just said biking. You just did a massive mountain bike ride recently. Yeah.
We did a race in Park City last weekend before last weekend, Park City point to point, 75 miles, like 10 or 12,000 feet of climbing, and pretty epic. It was my first mountain bike race, so it's not like I'm a huge mountain biker, but I like to bite off more than I can chew typically, so go big in that regard.
How'd you like it?
It was good. It was intense and sometimes scary. Do either of you guys mountain bike?
Not to that extent by any means. Just sort of getting out and playing is all.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the way to do it, because what happens is I can climb all day because I have an engine, and that's just built from the lifestyle, I guess. But then you turn into these downhills that are like miles long, and so I'll pass 30 people on the uphill, and slowly as you find a spot to go, and then as soon as you hit the downhill, these guys, like, they're flying at like 60 miles an hour.
It's scary fast.
No fear.
Yeah.
I mean, you fly off your bike, you could die. It feels like you could die, and so it was cool, but it was.
Do they just have that much confidence in their bike? Because of course, they're handling of the bike, but also you got to trust the equipment.
Yeah,
too.
There's an equipment trust, I think, that I don't totally have yet. And then when you come to these tight hairpin corners on downhills, there's a skill set there that I don't quite have. Like, I can get around the corner, but without braking, it's a different deal, and there's just kind of like a confidence and bravado in these dudes. And
I think a little crazy. I think they're a little crazy.
Yeah, probably a little
at a certain level. Not that you don't apply to that as well.
Yeah.
You probably do, but there is something to be said for that. Fearlessness is, it's something else. I can't do that.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're probably finding in their zone that, that kind of the reason I like to move outdoors is that freedom and that resetting and that just kind of being in the absolute now, I mean,
absolutely.
Because if you go off the bike, you're not with the bike, you're not with the trail, and you go off, like, there's serious consequences, and most people don't want those consequences. So you have no choice but to just be there. And that,
well said,
is kind of the addicting piece of outdoor off-trail athletics, because it's harder and harder to find in everyday life, So.
Well, I asked you before we started, what's your draw? And so what are you, and you mentioned it's a great release for you and stuff, but is that everything, or what's?
Yeah, I guess it's a lot of it. It's that finding that kind of oneness, that presentness, that moving meditation. And then I grew up in Wisconsin hunting and fishing and interacting with the outdoors in lots of different ways. So it's those things too. I mean, I put in hours on the trail and exploring areas, but the payoffs a lot of times are like right now, for instance, there's not a lot of people out running at night, but if you're out with the headlamp right now, the tarantulas are out on the trail, late summer, early fall.
I don't think people understand how many tarantulas we have around here. They're
out,
amazing.
and you only see them at night, and it's so cool, and there's nobody out there. And the same thing with the burrowing owls. They're like this big, and they're out on the trail, and if a headlight gets in them or a waist light or whatever you got on, they don't fly right away. So you stop on the trail, it's pitch dark, and there's this little creature there, and you just stare at it and you go, huh? As soon as you turn your light away and turn back, it's gone.
Do
it's
the
like
tarantulas
magic.
scurry or do they freeze? And because I'm wondering if you're ever going to step on one.
Yeah. They kind of, I've never seen them scurry, but they kind of freeze or go slow too.
Yeah.
But
mostly they win. I see one, I'm going to go around it.
Yeah.
Even if I'm going 60, I'm still going to somehow manage to go around it.
See,
I don't want to see what happens when you run over a tarantula. Although you probably just bounce over it. They are that fearless and that amazing. They have some sort of little force field around them.
They're the Chuck Norris of spiders. Yeah. You just bounce right off those things.
Well, therein lies the issue with the bike that I haven't reconciled yet is you are moving so much faster. A couple weeks ago, I bunny hopped a rattlesnake. But I think I touched it with my back tire, and that kind of like a little bit, I'm like, damn, like that sucks. Here's this dude out here hammering around and like no concern for anybody else, hits a rattlesnake. And during that point-to-point race, there was a ground squirrel that was dead on the trail as I came by it. A lot of fast guys ahead of me, and I'm almost sure it got taken out with the bike.
Yeah.
So it's funny because I like pushing myself. I like moving fast. I like challenging myself, but there's a little bit of ego in there with that. And you have to juxtapose that with the fact that like, I just like being out in nature and experiencing it and respecting it too.
And destroying it at the same time.
Yeah. So like, but you don't want to do that.
Right.
So how do you find that
Unless
balance?
it's a seagull, in which case just hit it.
Oh God, Todd hates seagulls.
Isn't the seagull
dead
here?
on? It's a state bird.
Yeah.
You probably aren't allowed to.
I thought that was
deliberately hit them,
here.
but if you need to, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
What's the opposite of revere?
I say
whatever
flying,
Todd.
I say flying rats, but I like rats way better than seagulls.
Wow.
historically, seagulls are, they're very important to the culture, but to me, I got too many bad experiences with seagulls.
Yeah. What you had a couple bad run-ins, or
yeah,
what?
I don't want to talk about it.
Okay, all right. No, it is a podcast, so could be a story there.
You can lay down. It's a couch. We can get into this deep, but it's funny.
It's petty. Basically what I'm getting at. It's a petty reason.
Okay.
But it has sustained. Have I told the seagle story? I'm sure I've told this seagle story.
I'm willing. I want to hear it again.
Once every 3 episodes.
Yeah. Once every 3 episodes.
So there have been multiple encounters with seagulls, but probably the one turning point was, so in another life, I worked I worked to live 3 summers on Catalina Island.
Okay.
So it's off the coast of California, and little piece of paradise, great little place. I was working at a restaurant each of those summers, and I had a certain amount of time, a short window of time, an opportunity to grab some food and get back to work again. And so everything on the island, this was many years ago, so I'm sure now it's even exponentially more expensive, but you sort of shape your life around, I have this much time before the shift starts. I got to get some food. I'm working on a double or something like that, right? And so I get a burrito. So I went about a block and a half around. I kind of picture it now. Waited in line. I get this burrito. I go back to the beach because the restaurant was down on the beach. I set everything out. I got the, you know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, no.
And so I set everything out.
God,
I got the burrito. I got my little sauces and things like this. And I am hungry as hell. I have this much time before the shift starts. And I get everything set up. I get the drink set up just right. This whole ordeal, right? And then you can see it's like a cartoon, is I'm pulling this burrito, which is, it's a pretty good sizable, weighty thing. It's like a Beto size or something.
Yeah. It's like a 2-pounder.
Maybe a little less than that, but something like that, right? More than you'd think a seagull could have handled. And right over my right shoulder, the seagull comes in all of its weight and glory and snags this pound, I'm going to say 1.5 pound burrito probably, right?
Okay.
And can't hold the whole thing, but drops it right in front of me. Like
in the sand.
It drops it at height. And I can't remember if it was a sand or a sidewalk, but basically just another big FU where it actually took the food and then it just dropped it right. I mean, just right in front of me. Right. And so slow motion, it 3 feet down, opens up on the ground. And then he and about, let's just say 23 of his friends, right, are attacking this thing. And so that was probably the first step, in my opinion, of seagulls, right? Now, I feel for seagulls in the sense that of like old school bears at Yellowstone where they just ate humans trash for years, right?
Yeah.
Seagulls in so many environments are like that too, just kind of eating our scraps and things like that. And so I get that. I get that they are sort of part of that tourist culture, but that story happened at least one other time. But that first one is the one that scarred me.
Oh, wow.
And, I have an issue with seagulls at this point. So
I'd like to see how you were holding that burrito because I've never had a seagull try that shit on me.
Oh, this was a bold seagull.
I wonder if you had a loose
This is
grip.
This is a seagull probably like the old school bears at Yellowstone where they have zero fear of humans.
Yeah.
I mean, zero. I mean, it could have probably taken it out of my hand directly, just walked up beside me. But it was the peripheral of and these aren't small birds. It was the peripheral of the seagull over the shoulder, just barely grazing my face. Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then and then seeing the claws, the dirty, nasty claws, right? Just snag this thing. And if it had somehow managed to even gotten 6 feet from me and enjoyed it. But the fact that it was too heavy for it, greedy bastard, and he drops it, but to a point where I couldn't salvage it. And it was seconds before, swarmed by minimum.
Did you get another
seagulls.
Burrito? Did you?
No time.
No time.
No time. Back to work. Another 9 hours or whatever it was.
Another 9 hours?
Yeah, whatever
what
the
were you
shift
doing
was.
out there?
Well, working at a tourist restaurant.
9 hours into my 18-hour shift.
It was a long shift.
Alex, bump that mic down a little bit so we can see your face.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. Yeah, because,
You're always thinking about us.
Well, he's got a good-looking guy. We got to see his face a little bit. Want to say, so Rooster sponsors van sessions. Not necessarily this podcast.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get there at some point, but I'm going to crack them.
Here, I was going to do the same thing. Hold on. Let's do it together.
Should we do it together?
Yeah.
Wait,
you ready?
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. God, that was good.
So I'd say the next 3 to 17 minutes is sponsored by El Dose.
Send in the seagulls to knock those beers out of your hands.
That's why we're in a trailer in a building to just double protection against the seagulls here.
But don't think I don't sometimes feel that invisible whoosh over my shoulder. I kind of look. It is a little bit of a post-traumatic stress in a sense of the seagulls.
I shouldn't be laughing. This is a terrible experience.
Yeah, but here is how. Now, I'm not saying you have to do this because everybody interprets things uniquely. Here's how I would phrase that, or remember that. I mean, that's a pretty unique experience. Unless, I guess I haven't dealt with a lot of California seagulls. We get a lot of them in Wisconsin, but
the California ones are assholes.
Here's this bird that swoops by you, grazes you with its wing. You see its talons clenching this burrito. And to me, that's where I'm like, hell yeah, that's a unique experience, you know
what? Okay,
but because hunger went along with it, maybe it's traumatic.
Here's my experience of just the large birds in general, because I also worked on a small cruise ship up in Alaska, right?
Okay.
And so we did like the little inside passage based out of Juneau. And so there were so many bald eagles up there that they were like seagulls, like anywhere else, right? And they were dangerously, notoriously, like you had to be careful, right? And so they went through a spell. I think one of the months I was there where the mailmen had to be careful because they were dive bombing the mail when they was delivered. And these aren't small birds. These could take your arm off, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know how many times I had.
Alaska's different, man. They build them different up there.
They do build them different.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times I had seagulls that would come very close.
Eagles?
If you're near seagulls.
Okay.
And eagles. Oh my gosh. All the birds. But it was the eagles as the ones that the speed, the velocity is just incredible. And I think that added to this fear slash.
Yeah.
I don't know. I do have an appreciation for what they're able to do. But at the same time, I'm like shaking my head.
Got a light fear of raptors going on over here. Yeah. Which is okay. That's okay.
It comes from a place.
He was reincarnated for the 90th time. And back in dinosaur times, he was killed by a raptor, and so that's
your next life. You might be a seagull if you.
This is the direction things are going.
Yeah. But the life after that, then you're going to have an appreciation for them. Yeah.
That may never happen. I mean,
rats.
I don't know. Alex, you what is your day job like? What are your daily routine? So you work. Would you call this a dream job? I mean, you were a race director for Ragnar, is that correct? For quite some time.
Yeah.
And so what we like to explore on this podcast is how to take your passion and turn it into your job, your life essentially. And there's it's so funny because you see people there's so many ways to get there.
Yeah.
You see people who are they want to be a dentist because they know that it comes with a couple of things in the end, some money and maybe some 4-day weekend or a 3-day weekend.
Babes.
Well, plus those people that just have mouth fetishes.
I didn't even include that, which is a whole other thing. And so there's ways to do it. You can go like on a professional route where you just make a lot of money and then you use that money to sort of buy time and do the thing. Or you go into that industry. You go into the outdoor industry, arts. I don't know what you do for the arts, Todd. That one's a little tougher.
We'll try to figure that one out.
Yeah, but you spent your life in the outdoor industry, correct?
Sure. Yeah. I think I've always worked outdoors. I'm interested in Catalina Island because I don't know that much about it, but I used to work in a place in college called the Boundary Waters Wilderness Canoe Area. It's a 1 million acre canoe park, no motors allowed, about 10,000 lakes in there. And then I worked for a municipality outside of Milwaukee as an arborist, so climbing around, swinging around in trees. And then I kind of made my way into the race directing world via Ragnar around 2015.
Did you race Ragnar first?
No, I had no idea what Ragnar was. Actually, what happened is I transitioned from the public sector in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to the private sector when we relocated to Salt Lake. So really what happened is we knew we wanted to move out west. we took a year off. We went and hiked the Appalachian Trail. Spent 5 months hiking
like
that.
The full thing, or
Georgia to Maine. Yeah,
you're a through hiker.
Yeah,
complete.
The
whole AT.
Yes, yeah.
Congrats, that's amazing.
Hey, thank you, man.
Wow.
It was cool, and my wife came with me.
And you're still married.
Yeah.
So
that's a task. A lot of people break up on the trail early on, but yeah. So I think what's happened career-wise is I've always revolved around. And you said it pretty well of like, well, you can buy your time.
Yeah.
Or you can find a way to center your time and put your time into kind of being tied to the outdoors in some way. And I think for me at its core, I've just realized that whether it's a physical job or helping people express themselves outdoors, like it is a way that allows me to kind of stay centered myself, and so that's always been the goal, and it's been front and center. In like where we live, I always have access to a trail close nearby, whether that's an urban trail, which happened in Milwaukee, or we live right up against the wilderness like we do here in Ogden. And then career-wise, ideally, because we only have so much time. You never know when you're going to get hit by a bus or taken out by a seagull.
Can happen, man.
Ideally, you would surround yourself with those things that inspire you.
Like a place without seagulls.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I understand.
Gonna have to change the title to this particular episode
to the birds.
Yeah, the birds.
Yeah, it's getting very Hitchcockian in here.
Oh my God! So. Yeah, interesting. And so, do you find that because this is the other struggle is the outdoor industry and the arts? Oftentimes, there's not a lot of money to be made depending on what you go into. And so, are you satisfied as far as the income goes and the amount of money you're making and living with?
But it's not always a straight path to the money. I think that's when it comes to like the arts. As somebody who was a advisor for wannabe artists, like, undergrad art students and things, where it's
wannabe, but future artists. Yeah.
Future artists. They want to be artists,
yes.
Right? And that path is not always like straight. I use myself. You probably use yourself as an example. It's just a lot of ups and downs, a little roller coaster thing going on. But I think if the drive is there, and if you're flexible enough to find, for me, it was art adjacent jobs, art related jobs. I have been fortunate to almost entirely have art related jobs my whole life. And it has gotten more.
I didn't realize your OnlyFans was art adjacent.
My what?
Your OnlyFans.
Is art adjacent.
It's art adjacent.
Oh, thanks. It's pretty good money, dude.
That I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can hang whatever you want in the backdrop. So it's a great piece of art.
Any of this look familiar, fans?
Yeah.
Any of this in here in the back? I like that. But they're like, wait a second. That's the same trailer that.
Could be a well-executed tattoo that you're showing off, Could be anything.
Oh my God, that's brilliant. Yeah. That's true.
Yeah,
though.
no, that makes sense. I think, I think what's interesting is, and I'm a little lucky in this regard. The interesting thing is like luck, hard work, and kind of a little bit of vision to drive yourself in the direction you want. They all come together, right? And it's hard to decide between which one is responsible for whatever, but and they kind of all are. But Nicole and I, my wife and I, I think through a series of events, we've known each other since middle school. And so we've been a team for a long time. And I think we both came from a lesser means than we have now. And that instilled in both of us, and I've seen it fuel people the opposite way. But for us, what it did was it gave us a pretty clear path of, one, to kind of be scrappy, but two, like how to play with our funds, and three, to make space for those things that we enjoy. And so
you budget well. Yeah.
And when you're saying, you had mentioned, Todd, like I think kind of willing to maneuver or, move around and make things work. I think the way we've went at it is like we live within our means well enough to pivot and adjust without it being prohibitive. You know what I mean? So if I had to, I could jump out and change jobs and still keep the lifestyle. And so you figure out, and this does come from a place of privilege to some extent, but we've worked our way into that place of privilege. But you figure out like what do I need in my life? And then how do I keep that in there? You know,
I will say privilege isn't always a bad thing when you've worked to get there, you know, which is great. So what does your day look like at Goal? So the Goal Foundation is in Ogden. For those who are unfamiliar, it's a nonprofit. I mean, you can explain it better than I can, but being from Ogden and not working there, I just know it as a force in this community to produce events. I mean, it was built originally around the Olympics, I believe, for volunteers and stuff. And it's just done great things for so many years that we all around here are all very familiar with the Goal Foundation. And so you're from out of state, and new to it. How was that? And then, you know, now you work there, and what do you actually do on the daily there?
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, so Goal, like you had mentioned, I mean, it is definitely like a pillar, one of many pillars of the outdoor community here, and even in terms of like giving back to the community, it is a pillar in that regard too. And formed right around the Olympics. And I think that the kind of original intent was, and this kind of happened all over the state, you know, which was interesting to see. I actually coached a cross country ski team in Park City for a while, and same kind of nonprofits exist there too in the outdoor world, basically leveraging that volunteer base that was created for the 2002 Olympics. And so to go, okay, how can we leverage all this energy, all these volunteers that were brought in, and then kind of apply it to the local communities that were impacted, and continue to bring kind of outdoor experiences to the community at large. And so Goal was formed based off of that. And then the Ogden Marathon eventually fell kind of under their purview and their execution. And now here we are going into what I believe will be the 23rd year of the marathon next year. And the operations manager is essentially the functional race director of the event. So, and I say that with an asterisk because it's at Goal, which is a nonprofit. We've got 6 employees total, and then a huge community, including all the civil services in the area that help execute that event. And we're really stewards of it. And so we just work to build it out. And so I manage everything from, you know, permits to cones to toilets to lead volunteers to timelines, and a lot.
So was this 2023 your first one?
Yeah, this was my first one.
You did so good. You were organized, and you sent out communication.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah. Well, you know, what's interesting in coming from the Ragnar world, and those races are built to be kind of executed at a high level, and you either do it at a high level or it doesn't work and you move on to a different job. Because what happens at Ragnar events is they're essentially, the trail runs I was putting on, they're 2-night events. And so, man, the logistics just keep going for 2.5 days.
Yeah. Okay. Before we get too far from it,
go ahead.
We have to address one thing that's very, very important. And that is the toilet situation, right? And
please.
Tell me what it takes to put together the porta-johns. What do they call them? Porta potties, the toilets for an event like the marathon.
Yeah.
Like how many toilets are we talking? How far ahead do you plan this out? What are the logistics of toilets in a marathon?
Yeah, well,
this is very important.
If one of my best friends, another race director, Steve Adderholt, was here right now, who
that's his
shout out to Steve.
He would say, "Hey, don't start talking about poop with this guy," because I'm pretty good at talking about poop. So you open the door, but yeah, toilets at something like the Ogden Marathon. I mean, we've got over a couple hundred of them, and so.
Do you do it by like? There's 5,000 racers, so we need. Like, is it a numerical value that you like? Is a math equation that you can figure out?
Yes and no. I mean, the problem is
because you figure someone like Brandon's probably going to use it twice as much.
Yeah, you never know.
As for instance, somebody else.
Well, it's the multiple start lines, and then we have them along the course of the water stations, and then we have them at our Finish Line Festival. But at the Finish Line Festival, we've also got flushers. So that introduces with the amphitheater, and so that introduces a different calculation because
classier toilets.
Flushers can take a little bit more if they're not on septic, and so there is a formula that goes into it. That being said, it always needs to be tweaked. You know, and one of the things we need to do for next year, based upon this year's results, is up that historical number at the full start line.
Yes.
And you may understand this because
oh
you're
my gosh.
standing
Okay.
there
So I'm glad we're talking about this, and many people in this town and many people who fly in from out of state will appreciate this. It must have been I don't know, because the buses drop them off, right?
Yeah.
There weren't very many buses that have dropped off runners before the line was already circling itself. And you're looking.
See, the problem is the buses. There's vibrations in the buses as they're riding up. It's stew in the pot of all these individual intestines here. They're ready to go.
Or it's got to be some kind of anxiousness.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it is. Okay. So it's a combination because it's cold.
Yeah.
You drink a lot of water because you're overhydrating. Probably most of these people that are probably drinking too much water and too many. And then and then also they've maybe done this before or have been told or read a blog where it's like, as soon as you show up, you get in line for the porta potties. Like that's what you do. You show up and you get in line. And so the line was immediately circling itself like the spiral jetty out here, like, and it looked like that in the holding area of, and I went to find the end of the line and I couldn't find the end of the line. I'm like, this is crazy. And that's where I immediately thought,
attention, we're going to have to delay the start of the race.
Yeah. Well, that's when I thought, you know what? I don't think they all have to go. I think that's just what they do. I think they just get in line because by the time they get into the bathroom, they're just going to go, right?
Yeah, it's a placeholder.
It's a placeholder.
They're planning on going.
Totally.
And no doubt they're working, like they're doing that core work in line, like trying to like shake things up, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. You know, so those numbers change over time, you know? That's one thing that we'll improve on next year is we will have more toilets at the full start, whereas the half start for the most part seemed to be pretty adequate.
We just won over a lot of people by you saying that.
Come on out,
those
guys.
people that know that line, because anybody who does a summer of festivals, music festivals, I mean, anything that you do, a toilet can ruin, or it can also just like you forget the experience, or it could ruin the experience. Is just the, you know, however they plan the toilets.
Yeah.
And the shape of the toilets by the time you get to them. Well, I love that we're talking about toilets. This is the reality of a marathon, though. It really is.
Well, and here's the reality of a nonprofit like Goal, which is an amazing organization. But like toilets, along with a lot of other things, are pretty expensive. And so like we're playing with these like finite numbers, essentially, you know, and that's a change for me coming from a little bit more corporate world where it's like, no, we understand you're going to have double the toilets or whatever. You're going to have 1.5 times what you need, and we're budgeting for that. But there's a finite pool of where those resources can come from. And so we really are, you know, from a.
Are these proprietary costs, or can we talk costs of toilets? What's it?
Yeah.
It's in case Todd needs one later.
Yeah.
I always wonder. Because especially when you're talking nonprofits, you know, you're working with the shoestring.
Yeah.
But you also know the importance of these things.
Yeah.
And so I don't even know if it's a percentage that's devoted to that when you budget things out.
But also I thought there was like in order to pull a permit or something, don't you have to have like certain things in place, like porta potties and a certain amount?
They'll have numbers of toilets and stuff like that, but they don't fit like the participant satisfaction standard.
100% they don't.
You know?
Right.
So they're fulfilling
the legal recommendation and then the participant recommendation.
And it's so different. It's like you're saying, like people are riding up on the bus and they're preparing to go to the bathroom to evacuate themselves so they can run lighter, you know, for the beginning of the race. And so the time frame of when they all want to go, that's what's so intense, you know. It's like, man, you could probably triple the toilets up there and still see a decent line just for a shorter window of time.
Okay, wait. Well, so this is good. So the cost per toilet would be what?
Yeah, I guess we're probably coming out to somewhere between $75 and $95 a toilet.
Okay, so what would be amazing is if this isn't possible, by the way, because of the logistics of that road. But you are so correct. At the start line, they use them all within an hour.
Yeah.
To 2 hours at the most. Hour and a half. And then that's it. They're just sitting there all day. There's 95 times whatever, however many. They're just sitting there all day. And it would be nice to pack them up, take them to the start line and reuse those damn things.
Pound them out there.
Yeah.
It's tough because a lot of the cost that works into it is just the man or people power to maneuver those things and move them. And then once you set a toilet down and it sees any use, they're not going to lift it and move it until they pump it. And that pump costs something too. And so
we're learning so much.
It's funny, man. Yeah, I think there's a lot that that I think participants wouldn't think necessarily goes into it, or that you just glaze over, like in any industry. You know?
We've talked about this marathon dozens of times over the years, and this has never come up.
We have never got
appreciative
this far.
Yeah.
But it also means that
we've never got this deep.
I'm not joking when I say I would love Banyan to sponsor a toilet. And we could choose the location. We put a little sign, this toilet sponsored by Banyan Collective.
We're in.
Yeah.
We're in. We'll buy a toilet.
I think
tell us the mile marker.
We could get you in a cool spot, you know.
Can we do it at the start? I mean, I'm announcing at the start, and so maybe we could just
I'd like to see the length of the line for that particular.
It could be your personal.
It might be
toilet.
I take the van, so I can cheat. So I have my own personal,
your own bucket. It's probably
it's a toilet. No, it's black water. Everything, do the whole thing. It's flush. It's flush. It's an 87. They went full flush back then.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Okay.
But if we sponsored a porta potty, Todd, that might set a trend to where you could get more businesses in town to sponsor porta potties at the start line. Maybe
$100 here and there.
$100 here and there.
What it takes to make these things happen.
Yeah.
I love that we could set a trend for sponsoring porta potties.
Hey, well, most people wouldn't give the shout out, but those unnoticed pieces, they're only noticed when you don't have enough of them. Most of those people are some of the hardest working people in the events. So we contract with this company, United Site Services. They're amazing. And,
100%.
These guys come out they've singed all the hairs in their nostrils straight out of their noses. So they don't care. They can push these things around. They move around. They don't care. You know, they're immune to the smells within the toilets, and they are out there working hard. And they work with us. You know, the cool thing about the Ogden Marathon, and this speaks to kind of the community, the greater Ogden community and the Goal Foundation, is that this is really an event that everybody in the community wants to see successful. It's one of those magic pieces of Ogden, you know, even when you extrapolate to van sessions and everything you guys are doing here at the Banyan Collective, I think the community wants to see everybody successful. And because of that, back to the OG question of, you know, how it's been coming into Goal, it's really cool to step into a community that just you can feel the support of those around, and everybody wants everybody to kind of be successful and express themselves in their way. And I think that's been the coolest piece. It's just coming in and meeting the community and feeling that positive support. You know?
That was like a seamless, amazing I think about these things. How do we transition between this to this, right?
Yeah.
Seamless transition from Porta-John toilets to Ogden community. You did a fantastic job. So thanks for finding that thread.
Well, it's not too long ago when Ogden would have been thought of as, you know, the porta potty of Utah. Now, I never thought of that, but
that probably came from us at some point.
That's
just collectively.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Wow, look at that.
And on that note,
so do you consider yourself an elite runner, Alex?
Yeah, I think
because you run with elites.
I have a hard time, kind of touting that, standing alone, on my own. But yeah, the truth is that I am, and you know, currently, and it's fun to just explore that. You know, it's funny to break down the numbers and look at it and go a lot of times I beat myself up and go God, dude, you're so close to you, and maybe you're past it now. Maybe you're 3 years past being able to get a paid sponsorship or something, but you're so close, and you just can't do it, can you? Or whatever it is. And you get in these, everybody has these things that we beat ourselves up about, you know.
We're elite podcasters. We're always looking for that next high.
Yeah. But when you step back and look at it is, I guess I do sit up there, and I should preface it with the sport's not really that big, you know? So
that's just it. It's funny because you're I'm this close to what exactly?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because that industry and that particular sport of ultra running,
sure,
you say, is how many people make a living doing that?
Yeah, I mean that is an interesting question because people hold it close to the chest. That's how small it is. But in the U.S., hundreds. You know, I don't know that it extends to that next zero, you know, so it's not huge. But yeah, so it's fun. It's fun to, I think.
But it's not like USA Track and Field or something where it comes with gold medals and national recognition on that sort of. It's sort of just you just become somebody cool within that particular culture. I mean, it doesn't get too much into the mainstream, or covered by big outlets.
It's right in that like transition period where like, I don't think that there's a proper way, although this is transitioning. I think I have to burp here, so excuse me. I don't think there's a proper way quite yet.
We just cut away to Todd.
There we go. Okay. To cover those types of events in a way that is enticing and dramatic as something like the strongman.
Yeah, or the strongman's on TV.
Yeah, anybody whipping the 40-ton stone or or even just like the 100 or 200 meter.
CrossFit's on TV.
You know, yeah. But you're seeing that there are companies that are really doing their best to live stream events and to put together great footage. There's a big race company called Aravaipa Running out of Arizona, and they do a really good job covering events.
Do you think like UTMB would be like, who would be one of the first events to really, like, maybe somebody would cover?
Yeah, I mean, well, UTMB is certainly working in that direction, and you know, the deeper insight behind that is Ironman bought UTMB, and the transaction finished last year, and they're expanding kind of a worldwide feeder system for that main event, which is UTMB in Chamonix, and they do a great job covering it. And it's the thing is that in Europe, this sport is covered more. So I went over and raced UTMB last year. And you know,
only a couple from Ogden.
Yeah, there were a couple from Ogden. I went over and got my butt kicked. I think I took 113th overall. I was 16th American. But this is in a race of a few thousand.
That's people. Amazing. That's so cool.
It was cool. But here's what's really crazy about it is you're running these epic ridges and having epic climbs, and you crest a ridge and like, well, okay, just to start the race, right? Like you're sitting in a race and there's a few thousand people behind you waiting to start too, which only happens in non-trail events. But here you are at what they call the Super Bowl of trail running, and it's happening there. Well, then you start in this town and it's a few miles through town and there's throngs and throngs of thousands of people, kids, like, and they're all going nuts. Allez, allez, allez. They're all high-fiving you and stuff like that. And you're running out at like a 5:30 mile, you know, on a 105-mile race. And you can't help yourself because
the adrenaline and just everybody else is running that fast.
Yeah, Killian's 2 guys up, like these big names in the sport, but then everybody's just jacked. But then you climb a mountain pass and you drop into the next town. And there's thousands and thousands of spectators, and they're doing the same thing. I mean, I
think that started with all the bike racing in Europe, you know, and it's just transitioned to the trail running.
That passion, that passion, I think has kind of parlayed itself into the sport. And what I realized there, though, I was there. We spent a few weeks there, but I was there 10 days before the event, and as I was moving around in the mountains, the one thing you realize is, first of all, they got restaurants up on the mountains. So there'll be these 60, 70-year-olds hiking up, and then they're eating a steak, you know, up at 9,000 feet. But in general, at least the people in the mountains, culturally, they're moving like at every age, you know. And I think because of that, they have an understanding of maybe what it takes to do something like the UTMB race, which is a 105-mile race around the Mont Blanc range. It kind of follows this famous through hiking trail that a lot of people do. And I think they just have a little deeper appreciation, you know. Every town that we would drop into, it was like wild, man. People be eating on the streets. Even later in the race when you're kind of spread out, you're running through, and you know, as it's getting towards dusk or getting towards morning, somebody's eating their breakfast there on the side of the trail, a little outdoor restaurant. It is just bizarre. Like it almost feels embarrassing.
So Americans don't do that at all here. I mean, they are not lined up to watch ultra runners.
Yeah.
Maybe in some places in Colorado and stuff, but it's just not a thing, right?
Well, my point is like, so even there were people that were out just eating, you know, normally like Euros do. They're eating outdoors in a mountain town. Yeah, I remember this one guy, you know, kind of not a super fit guy. He's off to my right. I'm coming down this cobblestone road. I watch him, like set down his fork and his knife. And this feels weird to me as like a self-deprecating guy. Sets down his fork and his knife, puts his chair back, stands up, and he claps as I go by, and he's doing that for like everybody. I don't think he's there to watch the race, but somehow he has this kind of respect and reverence for what people are doing. And then, you kind of get like hyped by that and a little emotional. So it's cool. So, and the other thing that happens, which I was kind of getting into is in terms of coverage is like you start climbing these ridges and you're climbing and you begin to kind of hear what's going on the other side of the ridge. And you get up there and this chopper comes up. And they're filming you out of this chopper.
Rad.
There are 25 helicopters out there filming the race, and the scale of how they cover it is just a different deal. But yeah, I guess to bring it home, it's going to be UTMB or you'll see larger hundreds like here. The problem is the scale deal, right?
Yeah.
So at UTMB, you can have a few thousand runners. As a race director, I know what we're running to in the States and why it's not getting so huge. And that is, and this is not a negative, could be a positive, is the Forest Service. You have a race like Western States capped at something like 260 runners or something like that. They run through what is now a modern day wilderness. They'll never be able to have more runners. It's tough to have more
because the Forest Service caps it.
And it's tough for impact reasons. It's tough to have more than a few hundred runners in an event. You'll see some that get up to 1,000.
Then how can they run Mont Blanc with thousands and the impact is minimal? I'm assuming, like what's
I haven't dove into how their permit system works, but clearly there is a difference in the way that those,
because they're able to push thousands through those mountains, and it's
and that's a difference in permitting structures. So if I had to guess, I would say, well, they've got a little more relaxed vibe on how they tread on their lands and the impact that they have, And the other thing I should say is there's a lot of great wildlife out there in Europe, but I think for the most part, those
you're not dodging grizzlies
and those European mountains, they've been picked a little more clean than what's happening out here, and all of that stuff is pretty amazing in the States that we have that. So it's tough to reach that level of stoke, I think, because we just can't get that many participants because we're not allowed to. And maybe we shouldn't be,
Okay. So your dream profession, would that be like just running all the time? Or do you have to have a job to go to?
Do I personally
just like
need
yearn? For the mental part of it, I guess. In other words, if you could grab enough sponsors to where you're like, hey, you're like full-time ultra runner, would you still be like, I'm gonna need to actually have a job?
No, I think what would be really cool is, you leverage something like being able to have some sort of low-level career in ultra running or moving to I like communicating. So like I would always want to interact and inspire people to pursue whatever their version of movement and the outdoors and inspiration, like whatever that is for them. I think that is what is, that's what drives me.
Podcast host.
Podcast hosts can do that. And I do mess around with that a little bit, but not at the scale that I should. But that's what brought me into race directing. I think on a naive level in the beginning, I thought, race directing, like I'm going to get to interact with all these runners and really present them with, these opportunities to go out and kind of have these moments that.
Yeah, it's all administrative, right?
Yeah. I mean,
it's tough, man. It's a tough job.
Yeah. What I like is the relationships, and you realize very quickly, I actually love the relationship with my toilet vendor and my barricade vendor because those are the people that you work with,
And there's the comparison. Every now and again, it's nice to see these comparisons between, say, arts nonprofit and an outdoor nonprofit, because that was a point that I came to at some point. So I'm an artist, a printmaker, and so I focused on that, particularly when I was in school. And somewhere along the way, I learned how I could affect / advocate for artists at a significant level. Like, I mean, I could affect the lives of hundreds of artists as opposed to just focusing on the artwork that I was doing for me, right?
Yeah,
and so that was incredibly satisfying / like, I need to do this, right? And I needed to do that, and I feel that now. That's why with the position I have now with the Arts Council down in Salt Lake City, I can affect the lives of artists at such a significant level. Very similar to what you're doing with the runners.
Yeah.
So not only am I inspiring them, but I'm also helping them do what they want to do. I'm helping fund their activities. I'm helping represent their activities, get their work in front of other people, But at the same time, it's that, there is a handful of us collectively out there that needs to have that passion as well. You found a better balance as far as running every day and the administration work. I have dove much deeper into the administrative side, and I need to find a little bit better balance for my own personal artwork.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's always about finding that balance. But at the same time, I think it is important that there are kids out there that also are driven to want to, kind of hold the reins of a race, or in my case, running a gallery space or something like that. That is really equally important. And so when I talk to, say, an undergrad art student, 1 out of 100, 1 out of 1,000 that might be interested in curating as opposed to maybe representing their own artwork, they want to support other artists. I am equally jazzed to try to encourage that and support them on that, And so I see a nice little comparison there as far as finding that balance.
Yeah.
And the passion. Like I definitely have, it's not sexy, but it's all about the relationships as well. It may not be the toilet guy for me, but at the same time, there are elements, there's a lot of elements that come together and say putting together a new exhibition or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I'm very happy at the place that I got to, but it took some time.
Well, it's cool that you have a comfort in that and you see the value in that. I think sometimes there are times that I struggle with something like that. And it's not necessarily that I'm like the faceless or the nameless guy, but you do wonder because you only have so much bandwidth, you go like, well, what am I just like? Did I just was I a little lazy or scared and not take the full leap into the personal endeavor, or, you wonder what levers you could pull to kind of have your greatest impact, and so it's you're actually inspiring me right now, it's there are people that need to hold space, for other people in that certain endeavor, that kind of that topic or that passion or that art form, to allow those other people to get out there and express themselves and kind of find themselves, so they in turn can kind of inspire others, so that's pretty cool.
I think that there are some similarities as far as artists. Brandon and I are both on Ogden City's Arts Advisory Committee. There are plenty of artists that know the channels of, say, funding. There's a certain amount of funding you can get through the city, but I have a feeling that there's so many others that are unaware of how to go through those steps, or they're unwilling to go through those steps, or they're not able to. I mean, it's a combination of all of the things. And so my goal every year is to include the same people we address every year, but I'm not as interested. I'm going to whisper this in them as much as I am introducing what we're able to do to brand new artists in this case, right?
Yeah.
You want to get new runners out every year, right? It's fun to see the same faces at each of the races, but every time you see a new face, I'm sure it gets you even more excited.
Yeah. I think, the thing is that I consider movement, and this is debatable, I consider movement an art form to kind of tie it in a little bit,
Sure.
And I think anybody that we can get out onto a course that puts themselves in a position which draws them, outside of their head, but also back from the thoughts of others and brings them right to the present where they're really challenging, like where they're at. We've put them in a position where they can begin to find like what their path is in life, and they can begin to go, oh man, that was amazing. I need to make more space for this. And sometimes it could be through a run that they're going like, I realized that I need to spend more time painting or whatever their passion is, because it gives them the space to get out of the past and future thoughts and worries and hopes and dreams and just go, hey, what do I want to be doing right now? and that is, it's why I like moving, and it's kind of why I encourage others to do so.
Anybody who doesn't think that movement is not an art form, all you have to do is look up John Denver ski dancing. We covered it in the past.
Yes. It was
I thought you were going to popular in the
something
70s.
Else, but okay. Oh my God.
We have referenced many videos.
Yes.
Of the art form that was ski dancing.
Yeah.
You have to wear.
There's also canoe dancing. There's the same deal.
They're totally. I've seen it. Yes, it's amazing.
They're good.
I'm so glad you brought back the canoe, because in my head, okay, so I did work 3 summers on Catalina. One of them was about 6-7 months. So I essentially lived out there for a little while.
How big is this island, man? Give me the lowdown.
Okay, so square footage, I couldn't tell you. It's 26 miles off the coast of like Long Beach, right? You could circumnavigate in the course of a couple of days. You could probably do it in a half of an afternoon.
Sure.
But
it's a small island.
It is a self-contained. It has its own school system, its own fire department, its own system of government, essentially. But that being said, it is also, gosh, I can't remember. It's been a little while since I was over there. Let's say multi-year, 15-year wait list for like a full-size vehicle. And so transportation is in the form of like golf carts out there. So everybody, for the most part, has golf carts to get from one part of town to the other. And so you're not doing a lot of driving, but if you do want to, say, get up to the middle of the island where there's like an airport on the top, they call it Airport in the Sky, I believe. And so I think that, what was I getting at with this?
I don't know, but it was
question
brilliant.
on this?
I don't know.
Yeah, dang it. I shouldn't have asked you to describe the island.
We totally lost it.
Yeah, No, we'll get back to it.
Yeah, you were
because it was the golf cart and it was the canoes. And so when you said that, I lived in Michigan, which was the land of 1,000 lakes or whatever they called it, right? So where was your canoe world?
That was up in northern Minnesota, right on the boundary of Ontario, above Lake Superior.
Okay.
Yeah.
Understood. And so I definitely can relate and understand the level of lakes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so in my head, though, I also pictured, because there was police golf carts.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
There was like everything miniature, like little mini fire trucks that were small. There was the little mini FedEx trucks.
No.
Right?
Wow.
Because the roads are not built for full-size vehicles, not for the most part, right? And so I pictured in Canoe City, where you lived for a while.
Yeah.
I could just see security/police in a canoe.
Oh my God, brilliant!
I could
I
see,
love it.
I could see a little fireboat, like in a canoe. If the requirement was a canoe, then you have the restraints of a canoe.
Yeah. That's all you can build out.
So if this is not true, my expectations, I don't want you to correct me necessarily, but I picture that in my head.
Yeah.
Where essentially everything is happening via canoe.
Yeah. Well, it is for the most part. Yeah. Float plane occasionally.
Oh my God. That's
it makes me want to see Catalina Island, though.
Yeah, you need to go check it out. And it's a very historical space. That's the Wrigleys own that. And there's
like the gum people?
Yep. And the owners of like the baseball team, the Cubs and everything. And so they used to have, in fact, their pre-season.
They made that much
training
money
was
off
out
gum.
there.
They bought cattle.
Yeah, and
there were gum wars back in the day. That was a big deal, dude.
Yeah.
Very historic space, like old Hollywood, right? Used to go over there, and it was kind of glamorous, but it was every man's island. Like anybody could kind of go over, and these days it's a little bit more on the, as cities do. I mean, as it sort of evolves, where it's a little bit more expensive to go out there, but
more bougie.
It's a little more bougie, but it is classic visit. It's a historic space. There aren't as many seaplanes necessarily now. When I was up in the Inside Passage up in Juneau, they were just littered with seaplanes, and I love seaplanes. So I'm glad you brought up seaplanes. But anyway, we could talk about
you went up
water
there,
activities forever.
Yeah, you were working out there as like a young guy, or when were you there?
It wasn't all that long ago. I had a small
He's still
spell.
a young man.
Well, he looks young. Yeah.
And so there was a spell there where I would open, essentially train the front of house for I did 2 cruise ships, and I did some restaurants, and I did a hotel, and so I would train like the front of house. And so I think that's where, my first introduction, it was a close friend of mine had just started at a restaurant there, and they needed some initial help. And so I had just finished up or was just finishing up the Alaskan cruise ship. So I remember cutting that short. And in this case, that's a whole other story. I was happy to kind of cut it short by a few weeks, my contract with them. And I flew from Juneau to Long Beach with the same clothes that I had. So I had no summer gear at all, right?
Yeah.
And then I got to work like the next day. And then I think it was right around that time. And I wanted to mention it before the show was out today, that many of you do know, or you may have heard me mention that I was lucky enough to live and work in Marrakesh in Morocco for about 7 months or so, 7 or 8 months. And so just my heart goes out to Morocco right now with this earthquake and the fact that I think the death toll's up to about 3,000 right now. And this was about 40 miles southwest of where I lived in Marrakesh. And so Marrakesh has suffered some fatalities, and some of these 1,000-year-old walls, these, imperial walls, are destroyed, and it's just tragic. It's so sad. But the epicenter of this earthquake was in the High Atlas Mountains, which is an area that I visited 3-4 times to go hiking around. And that's where thousands of people have died. And these villages, many of them built just earth and clay and sticks, and so they're not obviously going to withstand that kind of abuse. And so it's tough every day to know that's happening over there. Anybody I knew over there, direct friends, acquaintances, colleagues, have sort of checked in, and they're safe. But at the same time, it's like, these things are happening globally. I'm so glad I was able to visit when I visited, but now of course I have this connection to that area.
Yeah. Wild.
Yeah. It's just another one of those crazy stories that I check off in my past.
Yeah. 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 It's cool, man. I mean, it's cool that you've had a lot of adventures, It's cool to hear.
He's like the Indiana Jones of podcasting.
We could share many more, but
sure.
Catalina, this is a nice little plug to you. I think that would be a nice sponsor for us as well.
Yeah.
Is Catalina Island. It's definitely worth visiting. You just take a
visit. Catalina's listening right now.
Visit probably there's 1 or 2 friends of mine that do listen occasionally out there. Yep. But great place to visit. There's essentially 2 sides to the island. Avalon is where all these great hotels and restaurants and everything are. And then kind of the other side of the island is this 2 harbors where you go camping. It's a little bit more rugged, and that's probably where you'd hang out.
Sure. Yeah.
But at the same time, definitely worth a visit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's a fun trip over. You could make it a long day trip. I would make a weekend of it.
Yeah. Sounds cool, man.
Yeah. That would be fun. We'll have to make a collective trip out there. That would be a fun visit.
I would love it. Could we?
Let's get the seaplane lined up.
Yeah, gotta get the seaplane lined up.
Seaplane would be a little trickier, but you can take a helicopter over too, and that's nice. A fun trip too. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Alex, pleasure having you on, man.
Yeah. I feel like I got to know you guys.
This is a good sign when we just keep talking and talking.
I know. I mean, I could keep going. Didn't you win? I'm wearing a Skyline shirt. Did you win? Did you come in first?
Yeah. That was fun.
That's all.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think, to anybody that is moving out there and racing and doing these things, real quick, Skyline is a good example of this. It's a cool local race, and I won the race. But what was really cool about it, man, you asked about why you do things, or are you satisfied with your job, or would you rather just run, or would you be a pro athlete if you can? And I think, we struggle about these things when we're young, because people say well, shit, to make it, you got to be a pro athlete. You got to be a professional artist, man. You're an artist when you're getting paid for your work and you're not doing anything else. And inherently, we know that's wrong. We know that, that's wrong. That's not right. Being an artist is just me expressing myself and working on myself, or being a runner is just running, and now in my late 30s, I'm starting to realize I kind of am a professional runner. Nobody's paying me, but I'm paying myself to do it. And it is a continued process for me. I dedicate a big portion of my life to it. And I guess what would be cool to those listening that are moving, that struggle with what do I want to be, or how do I make it successful, or whatever, is that, just follow what you're doing, continue with that, and be an example of that person that you seek to be. And you kind of are that person, and with regard to Skyline, you guys were there at the finish line, you were there. And, I had these kids from Weber State chasing me the whole race.
Yeah.
And they're fast guys, super fast guys.
And
young guys. Yeah. Well over a decade younger than me, probably 15 years younger than me, which is crazy to think. It's funny how time goes by.
Yeah.
But there I am, setting an example, going like, look, like you guys are crushing it, and you can crush it at my age, and you could probably take it further than me. And that in itself, I think individually, those that you inspire around you at every level, those people are there. Sometimes we don't see those people we inspire around us because we're always looking at the stars going like, well, shit, I got to make it there first and then I'll inspire people. But they're around us now, right? And so you guys at your high level of podcasting, but not the highest, but very high, don't get me wrong, are inspiring.
What kind of high are we talking about?
Inspiring legions of people, right? And it's a battle, though, in our culture individually to realize that, like, you don't always have to make it to whatever you consider the top rung. Like, focus on the rung that you're at and
that's great.
And
advice.
Explore that passion. And
this is,
that's how you do
great.
it.
I'm so glad you're pointing this out, because every now and again on the show, I will definitely point out, and we get not nearly enough, but a handful of people each year that'll sort of take me up on this or take us up on this. And that is, if you're in the arts, if you're in the adventure, if you are into doing anything you're doing just a little bit more, right? You do have to put yourself out there just a little bit more sometimes to get in touch with that next person or maybe that next inspirational activity or whatever. And so Brandon and I and every guest that comes on the show, including you, of course, we put that out there every time. And so if you're interested in doing a little bit more in the arts in Ogden, for instance, and you're listening to this show and you've always wanted to get just a little bit involved and you don't know how to do it, you don't have to show at the art gallery next weekend. You could just shoot us an email. You could just show up at one of our events, or at the same time, you could reach out to any of the guests we've had on the show who is also there for you. That sometimes that's that little extra inspiration that you need to just get a little bit more involved, because it's a little bit trickier to go at it alone. You can still do it alone. I was told this to all of my art students, where you could go through those 4 or 5 years, however long you're in school, alone if you want to, but you're robbing yourself of this opportunity to just get in touch with a little bit more while you're around these sort of like-minded people.
Yeah, you got to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, we grew up on these ideals that it's all or nothing. And it sounds cool. You watch Rocky IV and you're like, get him, dude, like destroy him. But it's not. It's just be you, follow your passion, and make space for it. If you can only make 10 minutes and I can make 3 hours a day, there's probably going to be a difference in performance, but that doesn't matter. It matters that you're making space like for you, and that's the key, so,
how'd you get so deep?
I don't know. I felt like you were wrapping it up.
You have some issues in your life?
Yeah, I got issues, but I think you're wrapping it up, so we probably don't want to talk about it.
Okay. We'll invite you back. So don't you worry about that.
It felt like, you were rapping, and I was like, well, if it's a story, like we got to end on something.
There. What would you title this podcast? How would you summarize the lessons we've learned today?
Well, we'd have to include the seagull, obviously.
Yeah. Shitting seagulls.
Shitbird.
And follow your dream. I don't know. Like, how do you?
maybe we forget about the seagull part. Let's focus on the dream part.
Seagulls, toilets, and adventure. It could be any of that.
Fair enough. Todd, any arts
I do want to talk just for a second because it's fresh.
I want to say thanks again.
No, please go ahead.
Oh, thanks.
Hey, you're very welcome. I'm happy to be here.
Look at these professional transitions. We want to make sure I'd address this and then this. Yeah. And so I don't know if you were able to pop in on Saturday. Oka and the Monarch had a block party.
That was fun.
On Saturday. So I wanted to chat about that just for a minute. Yeah. Because we were involved. We supplied a venue and the means.
We supplied a van. Yeah.
Pretty much. So we invited some musical friends of ours. Let's just say that, right? And they were fortunate. We were fortunate. They were fortunate. This is a great place to hang and to play. So we had a lineup of musicians from 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock. I would love to chat a little bit more with Vanessa and with everyone else that ran essentially the rest of this block party. That's a good idea.
I should see if they can come on in a couple weeks.
And so we can talk about that. But that being said, I know that we have wanted to have more events like a community block party for quite some time. We had a block party, I think, a little bit further up the street not too long ago. For me, a block party is like coming into fall, so it was a little warm the other day. But that being said, you can't predict weather out here by any means. But did you have a good time on Saturday?
Well, it was great for me because when we do van sessions, I'm in
you
the
were
van.
stuck in the van.
I'm working the whole damn time. And
I'm hustling, talking to people. That's usually my thing. Yeah.
And it was just... And I was telling people, and in fact, when I was talking to Vanessa, because she's like, hey, can van sessions provide what you, this is the same conversation I had with Gold too. I'm like, yes. However, I would like to enjoy it. So for like at the Nut, we're going to be there, but we're not filming like we do at First Friday. It's just a little different so that I can actually enjoy the venue and have fun. And then that's coming up in October. So and we didn't talk about that, but Cole is in
figured Eric covered it.
Yeah, he did pretty good. Northern Utah Trail Series for those interested at North Fork Park. Look it up, the Nut. But I had a blast because I was able to actually go on the other side in the alleyway and listen to the musicians. And holy crap, it's such a great venue and it's so fun to just hang out and listen.
Out and about that day.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But it was a nice turnout, and it was something that it was the first annual anything. It's a learning lesson for season 2. So hopefully they do bring it back next year.
I didn't realize how little you could hear the music on 25th Street. It basically fills the alleyway here at the Monarch, and then that's it. Like you can't hear it out there.
And I think that there was some connection to tying us in. Why is that with the beer garden? Why do they always associate us with beer and with alcohol? I don't understand. It could be that we're drinking right now. But I think that was the connection. But it also means that we needed speakers on 25th Street. And then we also need to tie into the speakers down at the Dumpke Arts Plaza somehow. They've got these incredible speakers down there that we could somehow tie into those. We'd be in. Or we have separate bands that are playing down there on top of up here.
Yeah.
Whatever we choose to do, it's something to think about.
I love that you guys are talking just full on logistics now.
That's
it's what we do because it is an event.
Yeah.
It started as a podcast and it's turned into an event. And boy, I don't envy event organizers, man. It is a tough job.
Yeah.
When you run an event like yours that's outdoors, and it's an outdoors in the spring in Utah is, oh boy, there's a lot that can happen. And yours is multiple because you've got the, and I don't know how much you do the packet pickup side, because that's an event in itself. I mean, that's a whole huge event.
Yeah.
And then there's the actual race and there's the after parties. I mean, it takes an entire team. Like you said, you explained it really, I love the way you explained it, actually, how you're, I don't know the words you use, but there's a lot of community help involved.
Yeah. I mean, you're the facilitator, right? And you provide the common language, or you work to, for sure, but it's tough.
We were outside at the Union Station in a van shoveling snow. I wasn't shoveling snow. I was in the van with the heater. Todd's outside shoveling snow, and just so that
standing like 5 hours on ice.
Yeah, standing 5 hours
on ice.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
We brought out our own fire pit, and 3 people would show up, and the person who didn't have a home at the time walking
7
by,
years later, look at this.
And that's how, and we did that.
Yeah.
We grinded that for a long time for musicians, and we have those recordings still, which are fantastic. And when I was in with the van session, so we'll get there, but it's evolved slowly over time into an event. We have to think about these things because there are people who show up, and it's like, how do we keep them entertained? So October 6th, Case actually grabbed an author from that'll be here because of the Utah Humanities Book Festival. So he is from basically the border in Texas. Ruben I can't pronounce his last name appropriately. Degalado. And he does a great thing with his writings as a novelist. He switches between languages a lot within his novels.
Oh, cool.
And he will be here to do a reading during First Friday Art Stroll in between bands. And then, because I was parked in a van on 25th Street in Ogden. A person just randomly came up who happened to be a comedian, a traveling comedian, a touring comedian. He lives in Orem, and he was fascinated by what we do. He's like, I want to be involved. And so the first Friday that fit his schedule will be in October. And so he will do a 20-minute, Arvin Mitchell is his name. The comedian Arvin Mitchell will do a 20-minute set between bands of comedy.
Yeah. Wow.
Which is crazy. So this is a show that we produce now for Ogden and First Friday. Crazy. Wow. What are we doing?
Awesome.
I've got one other thing before we say goodbye. I wanted your opinion on this because I know I've teased in the past where I'll start skiing when there's one resort, right? When I could just pay one pass for a resort. Yeah. And I think we're getting closer to allowing that to happen, basically, you know. And so I read about this has nothing to do with that, but did you know that Smuckers, everybody knows Smuckers.
They're buying Twinkie.
They bought Hostess.
Yeah.
One guess as to a number, because numbers don't mean anything anymore.
Well, it's billions, but I don't know how many. 13 billion.
5.6 billion.
Wow.
Right?
5.6.
And so Hostess, as we know it, we've known it our entire life, will be, they'll keep the name, but it will
be Smuckers Twinkies.
No more.
Smuckers Ding Dongs.
It'll be some connection of those two words.
Talking jelly-filled ding dongs.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are the things that show up at these races, though. Is sometimes food like these?
Yeah.
But it was just more and more of we're focusing everything down to when it's. There's a movie called Demolition. Was it Demolition Man? Demolition Man. Do you remember Demolition Man?
I do. Is that Arnold
Stallone
Schwarzenegger?
It was Stallone and Wesley Snipes.
Oh, Wesley Snipes.
Anyway, they address at one point the fast food. It takes place in the future. Takes place in the future. They quickly address the fast food wars, they call them, right? And so all that's left is Taco Bell. So Taco Bell,
they're sitting down for fine dining.
But Taco Bell is fine dining. Taco Bell is fast food. Taco Bell is everything, right?
Yeah.
And so every time I read stories like this, Smuckers, I'm just like, I didn't
remember that about that movie. That's funny.
Yeah, wow. It's true.
Predicted, and it's happening. And I think that with the ski resorts, every time one buys another one too.
The Netflix guy, it was Netflix, right? He just bought Powder.
He had 100 million of it or 100,000, whatever the
majority owned.
Majority
owned. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we make fun of what's the other company that buys all the resorts?
Gosh, the big ski brand, right?
Yeah,
not bad on names.
We'll know it. We'll know it soon because it'll be that one name.
Yeah.
We'll have a one pass.
A one pass. All right, for adventure news, I'm heading to Yellowstone. We do Yellowstone news all the time. I'm actually going there Saturday, so I'll be there.
What's the weather going to be this weekend?
Beautiful. High in the lows in the high 30s, believe it or not. Every night. Completely
believe it.
High 30s, which I love. We've been snowed on in Yellowstone in early.
You go about
September.
This time of year?
Normally we go actually in October, early to mid-October. And right now is basically perfect because if we're lucky, the colors are changing in the leaves, but it's also the elk rut and they're very active. The bears have not necessarily started to den. They're trying to get their last berries in. They're stuffing their belly before they. And then when you go in October, early to mid October, the rut's winding down. The bison aren't as active. The bears are starting to hibernate. You know what I mean? So it's a lot.
September is a better time to get your buffalo selfies.
You can actually pet the bison in September.
Oh, that's right.
They allow that only in September. That's a joke. It's a joke.
Don't do it, Vivo.
So you have an adventure weekend plan too? You going to Zion or? I
have probably more of an artistic plan this weekend, so I think I'm just going to listen to an artist on Friday and Saturday. So
I'll be in.
When's your next race?
This Friday at noon. I'll be in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, running a 100-miler. That starts at noon.
Which one?
It's called Run Rabbit Run.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
It's an interesting race. Yeah, it'll be an experience.
You chase rabbits.
Yeah, they have a tortoise and hares division, so it's kind of this whole theme.
Amazing.
It's the highest paying race in the
if you place or
in
what?
The sport. Yeah, they pay out $15,000 to the first place male and the first place women.
Hell yeah.
And then they pay 10 back. And then they have a team component where you can randomly pair up with a member of the opposite sex. And then the lowest combined time between those teams gets like a preem, like an additional $2,500 or something. So it's kind of fun.
So you got a chance? You can take this thing?
Yeah, I mean, there's some heavy hitters there. Yeah. And there's some heavy Utah hitters there,
you start putting money, yeah.
Yeah, there's some big boys there. I mean, the thing is a lot of people get drawn over to UTMB, which has no prize, but it has prestige. Yep. So they're out. But the people that hold out, and so for me, I'm running Run Rabbit to run it as an experience. It's also a qualifier for Hard Rock, so that's necessary. But yeah, I don't know. I'll be in the mix.
Good luck. That's awesome.
Yeah, it'll be fun. It has those lows in the 30s, but most of the race, and that's Steamboat, which sits at like 65 or 7,000. Most of the race is above 10,000. So it's it really has the makings for, like, I'm more and more going like, damn, it could be cold out. Like,
what's the highest altitude you've had a stake?
Had a stake?
Yeah, you mentioned before on one of your races these old men at 8,000 feet having a stake, and it made me think, what's the highest you've eaten? I don't know.
Yeah,
the highest I've
man, a steak.
Had some food.
A steak is next level because I've had treats at like 13.
No, I mean like a meal, like a meal.
Well, if you consider ramen a meal, I've had ramen up at 12 to 14, and in my family, I do consider that a meal. You know? It's not a steak. Don't get me wrong. But I was.
Are you just like always ready to run hundreds? You're like just couched to 100 because you're always training.
Yeah, this is the A race, so this is like
that's the A race.
This is the race of the season.
Okay,
you know,
so everything else is training.
Yeah, yeah. It'll be good.
God, good luck, man.
Well, we're looking forward to hearing about that.
Yeah, sure. I'm looking forward to. I'm sorry I missed out on that block party last weekend. I got to get on the calendar here with you guys.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, Banyan One, for powering today's episode of Ogden Arts and Adventure Show. Listen and subscribe to Ogden Arts and Adventure on YouTube. Look for us on Facebook, Instagram, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, thebanyancollective.com, the Podbean app, actually, for Android and iPhones. And the Banyan Collective just started producing a new literary podcast called Check Yourself. Your Shelf. Check your shelf. There was another one out of Alabama. Don't listen to that one. Okay. Listen to the Utah Humanities Check Your Shelf one. There's 2 episodes out now. There will be more because it is in conjunction with the Utah Book Festival presented by the Utah Humanities. That'll happen every year. So that is produced by the Banyan Collective. That's Todd and myself, which is very good. If you want to be on the show, DM us on Instagram. This week's Outdoor Jukebox, I'm taking it back a little. We're going to go back to a little future ex-boyfriend who was on the show months ago, and this is called Goldenlight, and we'll see you on the next Ogden Arts and Adventure Show.
Let's do this right. How was the wedding? You guys at the wedding? Oh, the wedding was good? That was good. It looked nice.
How was the wedding? It was so good. Future ex-boyfriend on Van Sessions.